came to do. Hey, you know what we came to do? Look, I'm in a league of my own. Y'all need to leave it alone. I'ma just eat everything. I'ma just leave you the bones. Call it an even exchange. There ain't no need to explain. Yeah, it should be understood. Like when I hop on a plane and I fly over your hood. Y'all should be knocking on wood. Don't make me go against the grain. I ate my Wheaties, I'm good.
Was intentionally because this person that was sitting next to me said publicly that he completely forgot about winning the SIAC championship. So, Coach, I need to ask you about your selective amnesia.
Well, I say that wholeheartedly because although the 2022 season was a fantastic season, I mean, no doubt about it, it was a monumental season, but it's a new team, new season, with the same issue. What we did in 2022 has absolutely nothing to do with 2023.
All right, welcome back, college football fans. It's your boy Kelly Flicks, and this is another episode of HBCU Flicks. Let's get into it. We are in full swing of media days. If you look up, your favorite Power 5 team is probably having their media day this week, and of those teams, HBCUs are having their media days too. Last week, the SIAC media day just happened, and that was Chennai Berry just talking about how he just ran through the SIAC, and he can't seem to even remember what happened last year. I mean, you can remind him. Any other team in the conference could remind him because he did whoop on a lot of teams. He only averaged 40 points a game. He only gave up 12 points a game. It was quite dominant, and I'm sure a lot of other coaches in SIAC really remember last season and are going to use last season as a talking point. So we're just watching Coach Chennai Berry at this point do his victory laps around the SIAC, and it's really signaling the changing of guard from Albany State's old coach, Gabe Guardiola, to now Benedict and Chennai Berry. So we're going to talk about SWAC and MEAC Media Day. We're going to talk about Draft HBCU. They have a new preseason top 21, including the SWAC Conference, the MEAC Conference, and the Independents. You got Hampton, North Carolina A&T, Tennessee State. Then lastly, we'll get into our 2-minute drill. But first, we're going to talk about the SWAC Player of the Year. Who's the SWAC preseason Player of the Year? Well, this past week, we just guessed correctly on, well, not a guess, pretty educated guess, guesstimation, I guess, right? That the SIAC Player of the Year offensively was going to be Kelvin Durham, and it was. And defensively, we chose for it to be Lou Danillis, and it was. So this week, we look to go 2-0. We're going to talk about the SWAC's Player of the Year. So who I think is the offensive preseason Player of the Year in the SWAC is Jarvian Howard. Jarvian Howard of Alcorn State last year ran for 1,200 yards. 1,200 yards. That was the most yards in the SWAC last year. He went for 10-plus touchdowns. He was the SWAC Newcomer of the Year. The entire conference took notice. I think going into this season, without many of those top Jackson State players returning, Jarvian Howard is in the front seat to become the preseason Offensive Player of the Year in the SWAC. Jarvian Howard's our pick. Defensively, we're going to pick Isaiah Major out of Florida A&M. Isaiah Major this past year at middle linebacker had 80 tackles, including 13 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. At middle linebacker, a lot of those, that's stopping the run. That's not pass rushing. That's not sitting off the edge all day. What Isaiah Major can do is go from sideline to make a difference in really any game. He even had a couple pass breakups. The only thing he was missing was an interception. So with Isaiah Major, you see a ton of upside, but he's shown us a lot on the field. Last year with Isaiah Land, Gentle Hunt, Kamari Stevens, Isaiah Major was a major clog in the Florida A&M dark cloud defense. So take a look out for these two guys, and I think it's a lock that they're going to be our SWAC offensive and SWAC defensive players of the year. So in the MEAC, we're also going to pick our players of the year. So there is no question that Davius Richard is the offensive player of the year in the MEAC. No question. I think that every team in the MEAC will vote for Davius Richard to be the MEAC player of the year. I must remind you guys that these awards are chosen by the head coaches and the sports information directors at each of these colleges. This isn't a fan thing. This isn't a media thing. This is about the guys that actually play against these teams. I think Davius Richard gets that type of respect from the rest of the MEAC and is the offensive player of the year in the MEAC. Defensively, a guy that I thought should have got more recognition last year was Elijah Williams. Elijah Williams of Morgan State was a beast on the defensive line last year. Last year, quick stats, 60 tackles, 19 tackles for loss, 9 sacks. That would lead pretty much any FCS conference in America. What Elijah Williams is able to do on the defensive line is wreak havoc among offenses. He was a major piece in the Morgan State defense last year. And up front, even him changing from 9 to 0, he just kind of became a whole new monster, something that was very difficult to stop. And really, a defensive line having 60 tackles is quite unheard of in only 11 games. So Elijah Williams is my pick for the Defensive Player of the Year in the MEAC. I think the MEAC has a couple of guys they could pick there. A couple of guys. One would be Khalil Baker. Definitely got to take a look at him in North Carolina Central. Central could get the sweep in this fashion. Another guy that I really like, aside from a guy like Kenny Gallup, would be a guy that's already on the Morgan State team. I believe his name is a linebacker. I believe his name is Lawrence Richardson. Pretty good linebacker who looks to be the top linebacker returning in the MEAC this year. So enough about the players. Let's get into the predicted finish. At these SWAC Media Days and MEAC Media Days, they're going to have a predicted finish. So we went ahead and did our predicted finish like we're supposed to. So we're going to look at our SWAC predicted finish first. Now, with our SWAC predicted order to finish, here we go. The East is up top. I have Florida A&M finishing as the number 1 team in the East this year. I think they have the softest schedule. I think they return the most players in the East, and I think that Florida A&M is primed to go for a run for the SWAC championship. At 2, there should be no surprise that Jackson State is still around and still in the mix. The SWAC East ain't that good. The SWAC East ain't that good. Let's take a look at it. The SWAC East now has 3 first-year head coaches. 3 of them. You can see them on this list now. Jackson State is one of them. Mississippi Valley, Coach Kendrick Wade, first-year head coach. Bethune-Cookman, Coach Woody is a first-year head coach. The SWAC East is not that good. This isn't the SWAC East of years past. Coach Connell Maynard and Alabama A&M, there aren't very high expectations based around them because do you think they can win the SWAC? Honestly, can't see them as contenders. Alabama State and their defense looks great. If they have the offense to go with it, I would say they're content for the SWAC. But being as though we don't know if their quarterback is going to be fit to even run this offense, I wouldn't be comfortable in giving Alabama State a top 3 ranking in the SWAC East. I don't think so. I think when you have problems offensively, it leads to really consistency issues across the board with the rest of your team. It has a lot of people ask a lot of difficult questions about themselves, and quite honestly, having a bad offense is pretty much calling your season quits. It's not 1990s anymore. It's not the 80s. Having a good defense is not everything you need to win football games. Without an offense, you're going to be left out high and dry many a times, and sometimes you might even get smoked. You can ask Morgan State at times last year. You can really see it. So Mississippi Valley here is around the 4th team I have in the SWAC East. There's been a lot of talk about Valley in motion. I'm a fan of Mississippi Valley. I think Mississippi Valley is going to have upward trend, right? But their schedule won't take any prisoners. You try to schedule 2 Division II opponents in your non-conference this year to soften up the schedule. But in playing the SWAC, you're going to hit your lumps. You're going to take your lumps. There's no way you get out of this unscathed. So to me, Valley is going to be a learning lesson. I think Valley's going to take a couple years. If we're going to be real, a couple of years of development for Valley in the quarterback room and at the defensive line. I don't think this defensive line is even close to what we saw last year with Ronnie Thomas and Jalen Bill. It's going to take time for them to get back to that, and I'm interested to see what Coach Kendrick Wade could do. So then we got Bethune-Cookman down here at the bottom. They made a lot of moves in the transfer portal. They lost a lot of people, added a lot of people. I'm not sure what they are. I think they are around a year or 2 away, if Coach Woody is even the guy. At this point, I'm unsure about what Bethune-Cookman is in general. We didn't even get a chance to see their spring game. If you can find their spring game, send it to me. Anybody, if you can find the spring game on YouTube, send it to me. Longer than 2 minutes, please. All right, so in the SWAC West, I got Prairie A&M coming out of SWAC West. I know earlier I was talking about Alcorn. There's a big talk about Alcorn. We got to be real about Alcorn State. Questions in the receiver room with receiver depth. Don't get me wrong. It's about receiver depth. It's not about your top guys. It's about the actual depth of the receiving core and how many guys you guys can go. How many receivers can we put on the field that are going to be effective? Okay, and I know you got Nico Duffy out there that can play that kind of slot gadget role, and I do like Nico Duffy a lot. I do like Montario Hunt a lot. Offensively, we know what Jarvian Howard is. Quarterback-wise, we think Tyler Macon is our guy, right? If Aaron Allen is out and Tyler Macon is the guy, has Tyler Macon proven that he can make big-time throws in big-time games on the collegiate level? The answer is no. So it's yet to be seen. We're not sure if Tyler Macon's a winner. The same thing went into last season when talking about quarterback Demetrius Davis of Alabama State. Everybody was pretty high on him. I was pretty high on him. I like quarterbacks that are dual threats, that can move around the pocket and can extend the plays with their legs. I like that. I think Tyler Macon has some of that. But also, we haven't seen Tyler Macon out there with the bullets flying. We're not sure if he's even the guy. He seems like he's the guy, and in practice, a lot of people do. But as you get close to the season, you have to ask real questions and understand that for some of these new players, we won't have answers until the bullets start flying on week 1. So I'm unsure about Alcorn State right now. Today's July 16th. I'm unsure on Alcorn State in July. Now we got Southern. Southern coming around 3. They are of the big wigs, right, in the SWAC. They come from money, right? When you look at Southern, Southern is one of the most prominent teams in the SWAC. Them being at 3, to me, is an indictment on their quarterback situation. If Southern cannot land on the right quarterback, I think they might be in for a long season in the SWAC West. Opening the season, you play against Alabama State. And playing against Alabama State, they're probably going to play the toughest SWAC game in the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season, if you're going to keep it honest. People are going to be talking about this Alabama State and Southern game probably up until week 4 and 5. And the reason being is Alabama State has a great defense. Southern has a pretty good offense, but an offense with no quarterback. An offense with no quarterback is not going to move the ball on a great defense. The inconsistencies add up for offense that doesn't have a consistent quarterback back there. So if the quarterback is J.R. Blood, I don't think they have a chance. If the quarterback maybe ZT set, I'm not sure. He's a young guy. He's the highest 24/7 rated prospect to ever go to HBCU. Yes, but we haven't seen him out there on the field. We don't know how he works in the Southern offense. So the questions surrounding that Southern quarterback room are beginning to scare me at this point. I think the fact that Southern hasn't been able to find a quarterback throughout this process and is going into training camp now, which what seems to be somewhat of an open quarterback battle for a team that's supposed to be the big wigs and one of the top teams in the SWAC, usually they aren't going through these type of issues. Usually this isn't a problem this close to training camp. A lot of players are now back on campus. Picture day is going to start up pretty soon, probably after media day when everybody gets back. The uniforms and everything, the new uniforms are beginning to come out. We're beginning to see new threads. Yet there are still quite a few teams who are juggling their quarterback situation. Grambling is a team that I don't think is going to be juggling their quarterback situation. I think they'll line up right behind Southern this year, which will put them up 1 spot from last year. And I think with Grambling, it's going to be a slow grind into becoming a HBCU powerhouse if you can keep Hugh Jackson. A lot of people are out on Hugh Jackson. They've been telling me, oh, well, he used to lose at the Browns and he lost some games last year. Well, I mean, we got to be real about this. Last year was his first year at Grambling State coaching as a head coach. You got to give him that type of grace. Even though he brings in great recruits, he's amassed tremendous talent. We saw Maurice Washington, a guy that really was quiet for the better part of 3 years, come out and play football for the first time and become one of the most electric players in the SWAC. That's a guy that Coach Hugh Jackson found. You got to give him credit for that. Another guy he found this past year was Miles Crawley from Alabama State. He's going to be the starting quarterback for Grambling. I think in my heart of hearts that he's going to be the guy. Julian Calvez is a great quarterback, but with a little development, I think he'll be there. So with Grambling this year, I think Grambling takes another step forward, but I think the step may not be as big as it has, or everybody thinks it has to be. I'm not sure if Grambling's going to be contending for the SWAC this year. I think once you temper your expectations around what Grambling could be or should be and understand that what they need to be is going to take time, then the slow progress starts to make more sense. So a team I rated low, and I'm probably going to catch a bunch of slack for this, is Texas Southern. There's been this whole Andrew Body train that's been going all through the summer. And I hate to rain on your parade, but I got to be real. I'd rather be real than be anything else. And in this case, I think we're putting too much on Andrew Body. We're putting way too much on quarterback Andrew Body. Last year, a lot of people were putting a lot on quarterback Andrew Body. And there was a point in the season where everybody said, wait, it's not Andrew Body, it's his offensive coordinator. So why hasn't the heat continued to stay turned up on the offensive coordinator? Rather, it's become a burden on Andrew Body to be this quarterback that has to be out of this world now. The offensive coordinator at Texas Southern has to do a better job of keeping the ball in Andrew Body's hands and allowing him to make decisions with the ball. Having him get the ball up on these long zone read sweeps and these slow misdirection plays, this speed option right to the pitch, to the receiver reverse to the left. We got to dial some things up for Andrew. This is an offense that should be built around Andrew Body. And if it's not built around Andrew Body, it's not going to work. Just trying to make Andrew Body work into a game manager situation is not going to work, and it's not good for Andrew Body. If we want to see the true Andrew Body that we all know and love, we want to see freshman year Andrew Body. Not Andrew Body last year, who only threw for around 1,300 yards. 1,300 yards is not enough. It's not enough to win a SWAC championship, and it never will be. The fact that Andrew Body is still at Texas Southern is telling Texas Southern that, hey, I want to be here. Quite honestly, I think Andrew Body could have transferred to a litany of other schools, gotten a better opportunity to win games, and could have went and did that. I think that he made a choice to stay at Texas Southern. Same way those guys at Jackson State made a choice to stay at Jackson State or bounce. Like, some people have that type of opportunity. I think Andrew Body does. So this low ranking here is an indictment completely on Texas Southern's offense. If Texas Southern's offense can't get things together and they look like what we saw in the latter part of last season, this is where they will end up. From the most recent Texas Southern I've seen, they're showing me that this is where they could end up. They added some nice pieces this year, but they also lose some big pieces. You lose your best corner, Isaiah Hamilton, who I think was the best corner in HBCU football. He transfers to Houston this year. You bring in guys like Quay Davis on offense, which could help you offensively if you're going to actually use the pieces. Other than that, relying on more of your team to grow and, these 3-year starters to somehow blossom into world beaters, it just might not happen. We got to be real. Do we trust Clarence McKinney's recruiting classes? Because if we do, then yeah, these 3-year starters and stuff, that makes sense. Like, okay, he's been a 3-year starter. He should be good at this point. But if we don't trust his recruiting classes, there's no reason to even be waiting for the 3 years to be up if the guys he's bringing in are duds. So this is a make or break season for Texas Southern. Hopefully it doesn't break them, but we'll see. University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, I have you guys last. Biggest questions are literally everywhere. So let's go through these guys real quick to make sure I didn't miss out on anything I really want to get into. Oh, and Southern. Another reason why I have Southern at 3 is the fact that they have one of the hardest conference schedules. Play Jackson State. That's going to be a cross for you because Alabama State also has a tough schedule, but Southern schedule. You play Jackson State. It's a cross-division game. You play Florida A&M, another cross-division game that's tough. You play Alcorn State, who's already in your division. You got to play them anyway, and Prairie View A&M. So really, your crossover games are the most difficult crossover games. Jackson State, Florida A&M. No team on the SWAC list wants to play both of those teams in the same year. So Southern is going to get to do that, and we'll see how they fare. So going from the SWAC predictions, we'll get into our MEAC predictions. So the MEAC, much smaller conference. We're going down to 6 teams. Here we got North Carolina Central at number 1, Howard at 2, South Carolina State at 3, Morgan State at 4. Okay, so the biggest circle, you could circle the South Carolina State at 3. So with South Carolina State at 3, you still have Coach Buddy Pugh. Some have said that he may be coaching for his job this year. Some have said that he may retire soon. There's been tons of speculation surrounding legendary Coach Buddy Pugh. I mean, he owns a couple Celebration Bowls. a couple HBCU national championships. I think that Coach Buddy Pugh will get this South Carolina State team to bounce back in 2023, partly due to how good this defense is. Yeah, the back end, there may be some questions, but in the MEAC, how many receivers do we have to worry about? Like, let's be completely honest about this right now. I can't name receivers at Morgan State. I can't name receivers at South Carolina State. I can't name receivers at Norfolk State. So all this talk about the back end and the question about the back end, in conference play, how much is the back end going to hurt me? The top wide receiver in the MEAC last year was on South Carolina State. Second best was on Howard. I'm talking about Shaq Davis, Antoine Murray. There aren't that many top receivers in the MEAC. I'm not that scared of my back end. You bring in Malcolm McGee for South Carolina State. He's from Alcorn State. It's going to be a veteran presence back there. The defense will grow. But up front with Jablonski Green and Patrick Goebel, you're always going to have a chance. Your back end will always have a chance with that type of pressure up front. Play in and play out. So have them at 3. At 1, of course, North Carolina Central is there. I think this is their season for the taking. Last week, I said I think the highest percentage to go to Celebration Bowl would go to North Carolina Central and Howard. I have them at 1 and 2 in my predicted to finish MEAC standings because 2 things. They have 2 of the best quarterbacks in HBCU football, and they return some of the most players in HBCU football that have, quite honestly, have tons of accolades. This North Carolina Central defensive backfield has a FCS Player of the Year at defensive back. This Howard team has a pretty good quarterback, has a litany, really a trio of running backs that are great. Have a receiver that's, to me, is world-beating, Casey Hawthorne. These 2 teams, I think, will run through the MEAC. I don't necessarily feel like it will be close. And I say that, understand that last year there was tons of parity. Everybody got knocked off, so everybody took their licks. I don't think anybody will be undefeated in the MEAC, if y'all want me to say that. That makes you feel better. I don't think any team will be undefeated in the MEAC. And I think we also will find some more co-champs. But I think South Carolina State gets up to 3. Morgan State at 4 is really due to their quarterback situation. Carson Baker is not the guy. He's not the guy. And I think by week 3, there's going to be real questions about what type of depth do we have at quarterback to actually win games out here, because the first 5 games for Morgan State are relatively competitive. You're going to be playing against teams that are either as good as you or better than you. And in those situations, a quarterback can sometimes make the difference. And what will definitely make the difference is going to be up front. Up front, Morgan State isn't bad. I just mentioned Elijah Williams, a guy who I think is going to be the MEAC Defensive Player of the Year in preseason this year. They're going to be able to add pressure a lot of the time when it comes to these big games. But when you put the ball in your quarterback's hands, can he make the plays that win you the game? And I really don't think that Carson Baker is that guy. Delaware State ends up at 5 for me. Delaware State, they have a new head coach, Coach Lee Hull. He comes back from the Indianapolis Colts, where he was a wide receiver coach, Coach T.Y. Hilton and other guys. Now, Coach Lee Hull, what he brings, he also brings some MEAC experience. He was from Howard last year and their co-championship. So Coach Lee Hull, he's going to bring an entire new system to this Delaware State team. I think it's going to take time for him to really install it after Coach Milstead leaves. Delaware State is going through some changes right now. And couldn't be the worst time to go through some changes. It got to be real. If you're going through changes while you have a juggernaut in your conference in North Carolina Central, you know for a fact you're not going to win it, right? And in being competitive and trying to be competitive, Delaware State, what they have on offense is decent. You got my boy Rakeem Smith, who's a great wide receiver. You got quarterback C.J. Henry. You got Marquise Gillis at running back. You have some pieces, something to work with. I don't think Delaware State only wins 1 or 2 games this year because they finished 5th in the MEAC. Understand this first, you guys. In the MEAC, because there are only 6 teams, you only have 5 conference games, which means you have 5 non-conference games. This MEAC predicted order of finish will not make or break your season. Last year, Howard was co-MEAC champions, and they ended the season 5-6. Being realistic about this, these predicted order to finish are only indictments on your team in conference play. So That's why I say with Delaware State, you're going to play a juggernaut in North Carolina Central. You got to play a Howard team that's very deep. You're going to play a South Carolina State team that's very deep on the defensive line and really on offense. You're going to play a Morgan State team that's stacked defensively. Delaware State is really going against a stacked deck right now and trying to compete in the MEAC. Now, Norfolk State, another team, I think that they have no chance in the MEAC. No chance. Be straight blunt. If y'all want to make it bulletin board material and post it in the locker room, do that. Win some games. Norfolk State, you have questions everywhere. Everywhere, literally. You guys had a mass exodus in December and January where you lose your top 2 running backs, J.J. Davis, Raquan Smith. Lose them. J.J. Davis was once a 1,000-yard rusher for you guys. You lose your top receiver in Daquan Felton. Daquan Felton moves on to the Power 5. He was one of the best wide receivers in the MEAC. Defensively, you lose Tyler Long about a year ago. That hurts. Slowly but surely, Coach Dawson Odoms has lost the remnants of the old Norfolk State team that he inherited. He is now playing. He's no longer playing with like house money. He's playing with his own money. He's all out of house money. Like, you're done. No more monopoly money. This is now your money. These are your recruits. These are your 42 recruits that you brought in this past transfer period that are going to be playing out here. And they need to provide results because what's happened is you just lost everybody from the previous regime. So you're banking on yourself. If these new recruits are not the shit, you're done. We're coming into year 3 for Coach Dawson Odoms. There are questions around Norfolk State's program. If Norfolk State can win the Battle of the Bay against Hampton this year, they're in bad shape. And, I mean, you can start signing the horns, signing the sirens on Coach Dawson Odoms, and if he should still be there at Norfolk State. This is a big year for Norfolk State, but I think they finish at 6th best in the MEAC. So those are my predicted orders to finish for the SWAC and the MEAC. Now we're getting to the draft HBCU top 21. So my boy, Coach G, Jill, damn, that's a lot of words on there. Yeah, so if y'all can look, man, just make the screen full screen and then look on the left side and find the preseason top 21. It's right in there, all the different teams. But my boy, Coach G, Gerald Huggins, put together his top 21 teams in HBCU football. Now, I think I like this more than the top 10 format. All of these top 21 teams, all 21 teams, are FCS teams. No Division II teams like some people don't like. And they are all teams in the SWAC, MEAC, Independence. There are some questions I got about this list, and I got to take them up with G. But first, I got to take them up with the show because the college football fans want to know. So, going through the list, if you notice, at the top of the list, 1 and 2 is North Carolina Central, Florida A&M, then Howard. Most surprisingly, Alcorn State is at 4. Southern's at 5. Okay. Southern made it to the SWAC championship last year. Makes sense. Howard was co-MEAC champs. Makes sense. Florida A&M was probably the 3rd best team in the SWAC last year. Just missed out on the SWAC championship by 1 game. Makes sense. North Carolina Central won a Celebration Bowl. Makes sense. Alcorn State didn't do much last year. Another team that didn't do much last year was Morgan State. And Morgan State right now is at 6. There is no reason for Morgan State to be in anybody's top 10 going into the 2023 season. No reason at all. There ain't no MEAC bias. There ain't no SWAC bias. Being real. That offense is not top 10 and will not keep them in the top 10. Given a top 10 rating to me, it are teams that are likely to knock off better teams. Top 10 rating usually to me means that a team is usually much stronger than teams that are in different conferences. And quite honestly, if you match up Morgan State in their top 5 games, they can win maybe 2 of them. 4 against FCS schools, 1 FBS school. They can win maybe 2 of them. So I'm not that bullish on Morgan State. So I'd pump the brakes at Morgan State, especially understanding they don't have a quarterback and their offense is really questions. You lose Alfonso Graham, who was really your entire offense last year, despite Carson Baker really stinking it up at quarterback. Alfonso Graham rushes for 1,000 yards in 11 games with the stacked box because, I mean, Carson Baker wasn't throwing the ball anywhere. This year you lose Alfonso Graham. Alfonso Graham is now at the Pittsburgh Steelers. So who you have to replace him, what's going to happen at quarterback. Those questions would really turn me off to Morgan State and even keeping them in the top 10. So I don't like that at all. All right, now, number 10, speaking of top 10s, number 10 is Alabama A&M. Nothing they did last year makes me think they're a top 10 team this year. They had a pretty good spring game, decent spring game. I saw some things offensively. Defensively, I think they're going to struggle. I like Marquise Beason on defense. Transferred about a year ago. He looks good. Looks like he's going to be a leader out there. But defensively, Alabama A&M's defense doesn't look too crazy. I mean, I believe Zarian Hayes is still on the defensive line, which I like. I like him a lot. I think they have pieces, but it doesn't seem like a cohesive unit that's actually going to provide a lot of stops for Alabama A&M in this year. And even looking at them in the SWAC East, I had a hard time even seeing Alabama A&M compete for the SWAC East divisional title because their defense is so bad. I mean, if you can't stop a nosebleed, there's no point in even thinking you're going to beat FAMU. There's no point in even thinking you're going to beat Jackson State. There comes a point to where you go, oh, if you don't have a defense, are you going to make Alabama State's offense look good at the Magic City Classic now? Because your defense is just that bad? So, yeah, I think defensively they got to figure some things out for them to even be top 10. I didn't really like that much. So, another thing I didn't like, number 13. We get into all the dislikes, y'all. So, number 13, Hampton. Why are they in the top 20? They should be number 21. From what everybody has said this year, a lot of people are predicting Hampton to win around 1 or 2 games. So let's be real about their season. Let's not give them this top 13. I don't think Hampton is better than South Carolina State. They're not better than North Carolina A&T. And they damn sure ain't better than Jackson State. So let's get into the next one. Jackson State. Why are they so low? Coach G, why is Jackson State so low? Look, I get it. My way too early to tell rankings. I put them at 7. Everybody was like, oh my God. Coach G just put Jackson State at number 16. Let's talk about some teams Jackson State is below. I'll pull my iPad up for you guys. Jackson State is, according to Coach G, they are worse than Hampton. They are worse than Alabama A&M. They're worse than Texas Southern. They're worse than Morgan State. Worse than Alabama State. According to this list, in the SWAC East, Jackson State is, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Jackson State is the 4th best team in the SWAC East. That's blasphemous. Coach G, you know you're wrong for that, homie. I can't. Hey, look, I know they got a lot of people leaving and coming back and all that, right? SWAC East ain't that tough. Like I said before, the SWAC East ain't that tough. And them being at 16 is not an indictment of how tough the SWAC East is going to be. It's more of an indictment on this team and how good they are. And I think they're way better than number 16 out of 21 teams in HBCU football. No way. Jackson State, to me, I would put them in the top 10. You played in the Celebration Bowl last year. A lot of those players are gone, yes. But you played in the Celebration Bowl last year. No way you go from Celebration Bowl to preseason number 16 unless you feel like their recruiting was bad. But they were the number 1 recruiting class in HBCU football. So 2 plus 2 don't actually equal 4 in this situation. And I think that this is a lot about Jackson State and what they've lost and not enough about the field and who they have to face, their competition, and what they've gained. I don't particularly feel like the SWAC as a conference is that difficult. I think it's difficult for a lot of teams to beat each other. It's a slugfest in there, but there's no team that's the biggest Thanos in SWAC football that's stopping everybody and can beat out-of-conference opponents. No, these teams are losing out-of-conference games, coming to the SWAC, winning some SWAC games, going to SWAC championship. A lot of teams are beatable, especially in the SWAC East. 2 other coaches other than Jackson State in the SWAC East are first-year head coaches. It's not easy to do. So, from Jackson State, are there any other outliers in here? North Carolina, the fact that North Carolina A&T over Jackson State was pretty crazy to me. Norfolk State, yeah, the rest of these teams. Here's the funny part about this, right? With this whole list, at Jackson State at number 16, after Jackson State, every team below them is terrible. Terrible, like literally. Norfolk State, team I just told y'all about, terrible. Delaware State, a lot of flux. I wouldn't say terrible, a lot of flux. Bethune-Cookman, terrible. University of Arkansas Pine Bluff is terrible. Mississippi Valley is terrible. Jackson State does not deserve a seat at that table. They can still sit with the big kids. You lose Coach Prime, you lose Shedeur Sanders, you lose Travis Hunter. The list goes on and on. But what Jackson State has shown us is that they are still willing to recruit to stay competitive. And they have. A lot of players they have were top guys in other conferences. And you have to respect that and understanding that this SWAC East is not that good. So that's all I got for our recap of my boy G's top 21 in his preseason poll. This is a pretty big preseason poll. I like the way Coach G is doing it. He did also mention how he broke down all these different teams, how he got to it. He did a point system. He voted point-wise on from 1 to 21 on best position groups of each of these teams, coaching-wise, players, a whole bunch of other stuff. So I encourage y'all to go check it out. It's on drafthbcu.com. Coach G and my boy Malik, they also do a great job spreading exposure for HBCU players and coaches alike. So tap in with them for sure. I don't agree all the way with this list, G, but hey, you know what I mean? It is what it is. So this week we went through my SWAC superlatives, MEAC superlatives. We went through predicted finishes and went through the top 21. We also talked a little bit about SIAC Media Day. This Thursday, me and Jalen Chapman, former Morehouse quarterback, we're going to do Fit Check on SIAC Media Day. You guys stay in tune with us for that, and we'll also give you more stuff on 323 Thursdays. Reminder, 323 Thursdays going on all through the summer. I'll be interviewing different HBCU athletes that are from California. If you're from California and you go to HBCU, no matter what sport you play, softball, baseball, lacrosse, football, basketball, hit me up. We're doing interviews all summer. My boy MEAC is also doing interviews all summer. So stay in touch with us. Lace Up Podcast Network. Big shout out to all of y'all for tuning in with us for 2 months now. 2 months, everybody. We've been doing it for 2 months. And we just reached 200 subscribers. Shout out to all of you guys. Thank you for tuning in, telling a friend, reposting, sharing the show. We appreciate it. Stay tuned this week for 323 Thursdays and MMM Saturdays, where they recap the the W All-Star game that happened this past weekend. Peace.